Hello everyone, my name's Heather Wibbels. I'm the Cocktail Contessa. I'm coming to you today to give you a quarantine old-fashioned that you can prepare at home with some ingredients you probably already have in your pantry. So I call this the breakfast old-fashioned, or wakey wakey, as in wakey wakey, eggs and bakey. In this cocktail, we're going to combine flavors of coffee, orange, and maple syrup. So those three things together, we're going to build the old-fashioned that we're going to put together right now. So if you want to do this along with me, I've got some orange bitters here. I've got a little container of maple syrup. I've got some coffee liqueur. In this case, I have a Patron liqueur that's a coffee-flavored agave spirit. And I also have our lovely bourbon. For this one, I chose Early Times Bottled in Bond. It's one of my favorites, readily available, very affordable for the price point and for the bourbon that you get. So the old-fashioned was originally a morning drink. At the time the old-fashioned cocktail was created, a lot of times people took medicines in the form of bitters. They were tinctures, medicinal tinctures that were distilled or brewed with barks and seeds and other things that were considered medicinal at the time. In the morning you might take your supplements and you would have a little bit of whiskey, a little bit of bitters, and a little bit of sugar to sweeten everything up. So that's another reason we're going to call this a breakfast old-fashioned, because originally this was something you would have in the morning, much like we would have a mimosa or Bloody Mary now. Personally, I would rather have an old-fashioned than a mimosa or a Bloody Mary, but that's up to you. So to start with, I've got all my equipment out here. I prepared a glass with 1 large cube of ice, and then I put a little bit of maple syrup on my finger, just put a little smear on the side of the glass, and then dusted it with some espresso powder. If you don't have that, that's fine. You can just put a little bit of maple syrup at the little top. It'll just sweeten up the drink right at the end. So since we have our glass prepared, let's go ahead and start making the cocktail. I've got my jigger out here. I'm going to start with the most viscous ingredients first. So that means I'm going to use the coffee simple syrup first and the maple syrup first. Now for the coffee simple syrup, to make this, all I did was brew a cup of really strong coffee. You could espresso, you could use cold brew, you could use what you have left in your coffee pot from this morning, as long as it's cool. So you're going to take that and do a 1-to-1 ratio of coffee to sugar. In this case, it does have a little bit of vanilla in it. I put some in there just to make it taste good. So I'm going to start with a 1/2 ounce of this in my mixing glass. Now to that, I'm also going to add a 1/2 ounce of the coffee liqueur. All right. I'm going to add 2 ounces of our bourbon. I love that sound. Alrighty. And we're going to finish up with a couple strong dashes of orange bitters. Now, before we start the stirring and mixing process, I am going to put just a touch of maple syrup in the cocktail itself, not just on the rim. So to do that, I'm going to take my bar spoon, add just a smidge in the bar spoon here, put that in there. I'm going to add ice so that we can go ahead and fill up the mixing glass. There we go. And then we're going to stir the cocktail. Now for an old-fashioned, I usually stir it a pretty good amount of time. I want to go ahead and make sure that the dilution gets fully into the cocktail. When I'm using ice like this is ice right out of my refrigerator, and when I use ice like this, it does not freeze as hard as ice that you would get in a restaurant. So it does dilute a little bit faster. So again, I've got my 2 ounces of bourbon, a 1/2 ounce of the coffee simple syrup, a 1/2 ounce of the coffee liqueur, which is optional. If you brew really strong coffee simple syrup, you're not going to need it. A bar spoon of the maple syrup and 2 dashes of the orange bitters. I always do a little taste test, and that's really good. Next up, I'm going to get my glass out here. Again, this is a glass that has a little bit of a garnish on the outside. It has the espresso powder on there with a little bit of maple syrup on the rim. Get my strainer out, pour the cocktail in, and it looks really good. Now to finish this up, because I want to brighten it up with just a little bit of orange on top, although I already have the orange bitters in there, I am going to take a small orange peel, just press that over the top, rub that a little bit on the rim, and put that in there. And that will be your wakey wakey breakfast old fashioned. And that is really good. Cheers, everyone.